Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching 2012 Wipe, a television programme in which we take a look back at the year 2012 AD. It was a year in which many things happened.
A year in which Londoners finally strung up their mayor, a bunch of pussies desecrated a Moscow church, stunning TV footage proved dogs have evolved the ability to do Jeremy Clarkson's job with less casual racism, and Mr. Andrew Lansley found himself only the first of this year's silver-haired hate figures with access to Britain's hospitals in this confrontational Sky News footage.
Yes, it was a year so laden with incident, I hardly know where to begin. January, actually, yeah, I'm going to start with January. As January dawned, our planet and all the poor sods stuck to it were exhausted. 2011 had been a show-off, full of riots, revolutions and disasters. By the end of it, we all looked and felt like we'd been repeatedly kicked in the time tits by a gigantic dog-shit clock.
What we needed was a little respite from the misery. What we got was this.
Many people still missing after a huge cruise liner sinks in the Mediterranean.
Yes, the cruise ship Costa Concordia suffered a grisly sea smash that left it looking like someone had driven the Chrysler building into a pond and made people who try to avoid flying wonder what a holiday hiding under the stairs might be like.
Now, Entertainment Tonight.
Sparkly bum-brained showbiz US news show Entertainment Tonight took the unusual decision to cover this disaster, apparently because it struck them as precisely the kind of totally fictional scenario that only ever happens in films.
It is a real-life Titanic tragedy still unfolding off the coast of Italy tonight.
The real-life Titanic.
Why did their dream vacations end up a real-life nightmare like director James Cameron's Titanic?
Yes, seemingly unaware that a real-life Titanic had already sunk 100 years ago in real life, the hard-hitting fact-finders set about unearthing other similarities between the disaster and the 90s blockbuster movie, thereby qualifying as perhaps the world's thickest vultures.
So was Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On playing on board when the Costa Concordia crashed into the rocks?
Oh, I guess we'll never know. And that's the real tragedy.
Interesting fact here, the water that the passengers of the Costa Concordia had to enter was about 57 degrees. The water for the stars of Titanic wasn't much warmer, a frigid 60 degrees.
Almost makes you wonder who suffered more.
Meanwhile, upbeat concert footage from the States as suave, sexy Pakistani bombing President Barack Obama prepared to spend a year campaigning for re-election, but first shared a mic with Mick Jagger and B.B. King.
Come on, baby, don't you want to go? Same old place, sweet home Chicago.
Just like a rock star, Obama often reduces women to a quivering, screaming mess, usually in the aftermath of one of his drone strikes. Meanwhile, as you could see from CNN's thrilling debate coverage, the Republican challengers didn't look quite so rock and roll as President Coolio. Rapidly rising in credibility was God-fearing Seinfeld face thief Rick Santorum, a man so pious even the Pope thinks he needs to pull the Bible out of his arse for a minute.
Santorum's campaign was anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, antiquated, but mainly anti-Obama, as the news expertly depicted.
He found a way to attack Obama on everything.
President Obama once said he wants everybody in America to go to college. What a snob.
But while Santorum prayed for victory, Newt Gingrich, played by Grandma from the Tweety Pie cartoons, was all over the news, unleashing a barrage of astonishing attack ads against his main rival, square-jawed visual cliché Mitt Romney.
Massachusetts moderate Mitt Romney. He'll say anything to win. Anything. And just like John Kerry,
Laissez les bon temps rouler.
he speaks French, too.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Mitt Romney.
Speaking of the French, they had what you might call a good February and what Mitt Romney might call une bonne février, the Frenchman.
There was this really good film called The Artist, except it wasn't about an artist, but an actor who was black and white. And all his friends were black and white, and he lived in a black and white house and ate black and white food. There were these informative subtitle things, right, but they hadn't put them on properly. So the actors would go like, for ages. But the words came up afterwards, so the whole film probably took twice as long as it should have. It's got to be the worst mistake in a film since they hired that sort of stuttery guy to play the king last year.
But the dog in it, like the dog, was really good as an actor, like at least as good as Keanu Reeves. It was such a good actor. It could star in a film like a romantic comedy with Jennifer Aniston, with all like love scenes in it. They wouldn't even have to pay him. You know, you could just probably give him like a tennis ball to chew on and he'd be fine with that. That's what they do with Hugh Jackman.
The artist swept the board at the Oscars, which was also notable for other brilliant performances. For instance, in this penetrating live interview on Sky, actor Nick Nolte excelled in the role of most confused individual.
Now that you're here all dressed up, are you a bit itty-bitty excited?
Well, you know, if I knew what you said, I could probably answer you. So I'll say yes, 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 and no.
True or false, you own a pet crow?
What'd I do?
As March shimmied into view, the BBC tried to end the talent show wars for good with a new kind of singing contest, one where trivial things like looks or basic entertainment value simply didn't matter.
Dropped Nagasaki style into the Saturday night schedules, The Voice was genuinely revolutionary, by which I mean it had revolving chairs in it. The nation's hopeful Desperoids screeched at the backs of Estuary Foghorn Jessie J, Fluffy Roast Chicken Tom Jones, Butthead-shaped Wannabono Danny O'Donoghue, and the photo Tom Jones takes to his tanning salon, Will I Am.
You know, Will I Am was so ubiquitous this year, I started calling him Will You Leave.
As a sing-along blind man's bluff, it was nearly fun. Look, Tom can hear something. Is it singing? His spidey sense is tingling. Where on earth is it coming from? But the moment the chairs spun around, all novelty and tension disappeared.
If you ask me, they should have thrown in some more interesting format points, like in the brilliant Aussie version, where Seal had to masturbate to orgasm before contestants hit the high note. Omni-shambles, that was a word that cropped up a lot in 2012. Not as often as the word "the" did, yes, but to be honest, I'm getting sick of your incessant pedantry.
Faced with a tanker driver's strike that hadn't been announced, Francis Maud told the public to top up their jerry cans, and having Googled the word jerry can, they began panic buying, as the news gleefully recounted.
Although some hoped to avoid the panic by putting off their panic till later.
But I'm trying not to panic buy, because it takes quite a time, just panic buying.
Then a row broke out over VAT on hot pastries, prompting MPs to turn the news into one big pie-eating contest, starting when humanoid David Cameron claimed to regularly ingest pleb grub.
I love a hot pasty. I think the last one I bought was from the West Cornwall Pasty Company.
Oh, is it just me, or is this anecdote really sexy?
I seem to remember I was in Leeds Station at the time.
Keep talking, Cameron. Ooh.
And the choice was whether to have one of their small ones or their large ones.
Ooh. Then, in even more powerfully erotic scenes, Ed's Miliband and Balls shambled into a Greggs to prove how much they love the taste of hot mashed pig.
Can we get 8 sausage rolls?
8? Check out the high roller. What a lifestyle. I mean, Ed Miliband lives like P. Diddy, doesn't he?
Well, we're in Redditch here to meet some people, and we popped in to buy some sausage rolls.
There was this book, 50 Shades of Grey, which was clever because it was for normal people and perverts, like how Harry Potter's for kids and adults. It was quite violent. It should have been called 7 Shades of Shit, really.
The woman who wrote it was on Newsnight, and Paul Mason listed some of his favourite bits, and that was quite a turn on, actually. Paul Mason saying all that.
Fisting, anal intercourse, genital clamps, whipping.
I rewound it and watched it again.
Fisting, anal intercourse, genital clamps, whipping.
And one more time after that.
Fisting, anal intercourse, genital clamps, whipping.
No, and actually, once more, come to think of it.
Fisting, anal intercourse, genital clamps, whipping.
I'm trying to set it as a ringtone.
This March, humankind was saved forever as an inspiring charity video got everyone online talking about Joseph Kony, a profoundly horrible African warlord with an army of child soldiers. It was a slick, heavily graphically stylised video in which a charismatic, idealistic filmmaker named Jason Russell evangelised about how the best way to stop Joseph Kony was to make him famous so politicians would be forced to pay attention and stop him. And how were they going to stop him? We'll get back to you on that one.
Retweeted by celebrities, the video went big, becoming the most viewed YouTube clip since Two Cat Bin Ladies One Cup. 70 million views in just 5 days, a comparison the news was mightily impressed by.
For comparison, it took singing sensation Susan Boyle 7 days to reach that mark, and the Old Spice guy 5 months.
If only they'd kidnapped children.
Meanwhile, critics said the film was so crudely oversimplified it may as well have claimed Joseph Kony was literally whittling children into bullets and firing them at defenceless unicorns.
He's the bad guy?
Yeah. Furthermore, some voices worried that the charity responsible, Invisible Children, seemed to be spending lots of the money it raised making glitzy videos that raised awareness of what exactly?
These glossy videos were all over the internet, videos that posed questions. Questions like, why did they make this slick High School Musical number that doesn't really have much to do with Uganda, but apparently lots to do with their dance fantasies?
We are here to change the world.
And what the leaping great joinkers was the deal with the odd-sounding Fourth Estate spin-off youth camp event they'd organised, promoted via an unsettling, some might say creepy set of videos, apparently promising some kind of global revolution.
We will come together to map out a new revolution. You will say it all started at the Fourth Estate, because it will.
Sadly, before these questions could be answered, Invisible Children co-founder Jason Russell starred in a more upsetting follow-up viral video that was analysed in depressing detail by gossip mongers.
Jason hit the streets of San Diego naked, cursing, smacking the pavement and screaming about the devil.
And tragically for Joseph Kony, he was soon knocked off the top of the viral pop charts, and there's no chance of him getting back up there, at least until he teaches his child army how to dance Gangnam Style.
Technology, and as Google Chrome decides to promote itself with the unsettling tale of a stalky ex-boyfriend who's compiled an exhaustive dossier on his estranged girlfriend in a desperate bid to impress her, Nokia unveil a snazzy smartphone apparently equipped with incredible twat-dazzling technology.
Why do you love your Lumia?
My Lumia improves my life.
One of the great features is the People Hub. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter.
WhatsApp, messaging.
I can have a tile for every part of my life.
Yeah, I've got a tile for every part of my bathroom. You don't hear me crowing about it.
You can completely make it your own.
It is your own.
It's fast.
Literally just flip through apps.
Send a tweet really, really quickly.
Hear back from Lord McAlpine even quicker.
Can I take a photo? Smile. Amazing.
I'll say.
Diets, and Mel B's here with some convincing and moving personal testimony.
Now, I know how hard it is to get started, but this is what I did. Hi, I'm Mel B, and help, I need to lose 15 kilos.
What, you didn't use a phone?
I feel lighter. Like when I walk now, it's not so bombarder, it's more ding, doing, doing, doing.
You want to get that looked at?
Losing weight does not have to be scary. Come join me, call Jenny, now.
No.
Coffee, and a high street coffee chain attempts to hammer this surreal sing-along trauma into potential customers' minds like a tent peg into a watermelon full of coffee beans.
Tonight, I want to give it all to you.
You know, I was so weirded out by this, I thought I'd sue them for emotional distress, so I contacted my barista. My barista. Barista. Oh, f*** off. This reminds me of? It reminds me of that horrible scene in the grisly Roman epic Caligula where they bury Christians up to their necks in the stadium and then send in this nightmarish head-chopping machine. April featured one of the nation's favourite sporting events, the Grand National, an event that does for horses what a horse-killing machine also does for horses. But never mind what I think about it, what might a drunker, more American cynic make of the Grand National? Someone like scrofulous drinkist Doug Stanhope.
I'm Doug Stanhope, and that's why I drink. The Grand National is the sickest, most perverted thing where they take as many horses as will fit on the track and they cram them all into this line and then they go, how many horses will this track hold? We'll add 5 more. Fuck them. And they fire them off, and it's not just enough to run around in a circle. They gotta put obstacles. You put up fences and barriers and embankments with a moat. It's like Gallipoli. It's like World War I, where they're expecting a Turkish gunner on the other side, mowing them down. And these horses collide in this giant demolition derby equine massacre, and they do triple Lindy forward somersaults with jockeys flying off in the air, and they die. They die on the track, and no one gives a shit. And then the horses have to go around again and see their dead friend that they're trying to set up a big concession stand around so they can kill it right on the track. They don't even pause the race. Just kill them right there. Put up a little curtain like Angela's changing her nightie. And all the announcers sound like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spawn. Everyone talks like this.
They go over the chair, and the leader jumped it well and always right as a faller at the chair.
Well, we've lost another one. Oh, that one fell. Oh, that one stepped out. That one's gonna go smoke a fag, I believe. No, he's dying! He's mutilated!
Human interest and ITV's deceptively racy agenda-setting behemoth this morning meets a man weighed down with a heavy burden.
Well, come in just a moment, we'll meet Jonah Falcon, the man who has what is thought to be the world's largest penis.
Actually, they just reused that caption from the last time they had Piers Morgan on.
Because they couldn't broadcast Jonah's penis, Philip Schofield had a handy cardboard model showing just how mammoth it was.
So this is the sort of thing that we're talking about.
Of course, on the back of that, he's written the names of some suspected massive penises he found on the internet.
Without using a ruler, I go from here to the crook of my elbow.
Shortly after that, Schofield booked him as one of the rounds on the Cube. Alternative TV network and former Big Brother bulletin board Channel 4 turned 30 this year, but that didn't stop it experimenting with drugs.
Drugs Live, the ecstasy trial, includes scenes of drug taking.
You don't say.
The informative Drugs Live was the sort of show Channel 4 used to make when it started 30 years ago, but unfortunately this was made in 2012, sometime after the extensive ecstasy-taking experiment the British public's been getting on with for the past 25 years.
Its big draw was a man on drugs live in the studio. Anything could happen. Would his skull burst? Would he start speaking in tongues? Would he say, "I'm fine, yeah, I'm feeling good"?
He's fine, aren't you?
I'm fine, yeah, I'm feeling good.
Still, this is the first time they've ever let someone on drugs live on Channel 4, apart from maybe every single episode of The Word.
Sticking with law-breaking, Gordon Behind Bars was another new Channel 4 format disguised as an old Alan Partridge format. The idea was to rehabilitate a group of criminal offenders by sticking them in a boiling hot room with an angry Scotsman and a range of sharp objects.
What could possibly go wrong?
The show itself provided a thoughtful look at just what happens when the men's society has failed, shout at each other in a kitchen.
Most TV presenters would shit their own hips out being surrounded by potentially violent criminals, but not Gordon. No, he knows all about violence. Why, only the other day in his kitchen, an egg was beaten and a fish got battered. Also, 5 waiters were murdered. Sticking with crime, in another snazzy Channel 4 format, Gok Wan attempted to smuggle 15 kilos of Class A shit onto primetime television in the baffling dating show Baggage. After an opening dance so horrid your mind won't let you recall it after seeing this footage, the idea behind baggage, became clear. A human being with genitals has to choose a potential mate from 3 other human beings with genitals. Except rather than basing their decision on an assessment of their positive traits, they instead decided who to discard on the basis of their negative traits, or emotional luggage. Emotional luggage. Baggage! Fortunately, the luggage, by which I mean baggage, in question was fairly innocuous. Although, of course, in future they'll have to tearfully confess to wannabe partners that they once, many years ago and in a moment of madness, appeared on luggage. Baggage!
Hello and welcome live to Hotel GB.
Finally, all of Channel 4's format experimentation came to a head in the bold Hotel GB, which was a bit like every reality show ever made, only somehow less so.
It featured all the recently tried and tested format stars. Dr. Christian from Drugs Live, Gordon Ramsay from Cooking in Prison, and Gok Wan from Baggage.
Alongside that lot were Kirsty off Kirsty and Thingy as the concierge for no reason, and Thingy off Kirsty and Thingy playing the maitre d' for no reason.
I'm very conscious that it's Gordon's name above the door in the restaurant, and if it's rubbish, then it's his name that will be affected, rather than mine.
What is your name?
Their task was to teach impressionable unemployed youths how to run a hotel pointlessly and on television for ages while providing as little entertainment as possible.
Would they pull it off? Yes.
Hotel GB can be the biggest shithole in London if we don't get this right.
Come on, don't be negative. Could be the biggest shithole in the world.
Jimmy Cartwright was on this satire thing for Guardian readers who think they're better than everyone else. So he did this thing where he dressed up all sexy, like really sexy, and said Barclays didn't pay enough tax.
Why don't you apply for the Barclays 1% tax scam?
But then this year, it turned out that he hadn't paid much tax, which is the most satirical thing ever.
He apologised, right, but there was a period before he did when literally no one knew what to think about it until David Cameron turned up on the news to say it was wrong.
That is not fair. That is not right.
What was really sad was you could tell from the coverage that Cameron was obviously really annoyed with all the offshore tax loophole stuff, but there's nothing he can do about it. He's literally powerless to stop it.
2012 was Her Royal Queenliness II's Diamond Jubilee, which meant the first half of the year was set aside for ruddy-cheeked forelock tugging. For years, we the people had used Her Majesty as a kind of industrial digger for planting trees, and now it was time to say thank you by standing around waving flags like delighted peasants.
As Sky News made clear, the Jubilee weekend itself was an event you'd want to tune in and remember forever.
For one bank holiday weekend, the whole country will come together.
We'll be all over London, bringing you the very best coverage, whatever the weather.
Oh, whatever the weather. Wonder what the weather will be like. Well, fortunately, the BBC has some of the finest weathermen in the world, and Prince Charles.
Well, it's an unsettled picture as we head towards the end of the week. This afternoon it'll be cold, wet and windy.
Oh, right. Well, I'm sure it won't ruin the celebrations.
Those celebrations promised to be an uplifting spectacle, starting with a glorious river pageant, which we were told would resemble an oldie-worldy painting with all boats and stuff in it. And in the event, as we'd been promised, what we witnessed really was like something from the history books.
Specifically, the Great Flood.
Yes, because as this armada sailed down the river, the coverage showed the Thames got so excited it jumped into the sky and then fell down again all over everyone.
Still, if you squinted between the raindrops, you could see it was wonderfully varied. There were boats, more boats, boat there with a massive bell on it, another boat with a massive bell on it. Basically, lots of boats.
It was hammering down so hard it was often difficult to see what was happening, but despite everything looking like a grim emergency evacuation, the media tried putting a brave face on things.
My teeth are chattering a little bit, my hands are cold, my feet are cold. It is spitting a little bit, Eamon, but you know what? Everybody's getting in the party mood.
Whatever the weather, AK. This year, one of mankind's worst fears was realised as a formidable new viral threat emerged in Asia.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
This harrowing footage depicts the first recorded victim, a South Korean entertainer known only as Psy, as he succumbed to the contagion's trademark spasms. Victims of Gangnam Style exhibited several distinctive convulsions: crossed wrists, upper arms, seizures, a compulsion to trot like a horse, and a dramatic series of side-to-side leg contractions which left the victim looking like a confused drunk desperately trying to shake a turd down their trouser leg. Soon Gangnam Style was spreading across the region at a bewildering pace as chilling recordings of the agonised contortions of its victims made devastatingly clear. It swept through the Thai Navy and infected thousands of prisoners in the Philippines.
Like your mum has. But the outbreak was largely contained until patient Zero was inexplicably allowed out of quarantine to infect regions worldwide.
It's the name that is on everyone's lips.
Lord McAlpine?
Inside!
Oh, right, yeah.
Yes, as this effervescent X Factor moment firmly demonstrated, few were immune to the condition, not even former Spice Girls. In upsetting scenes broadcast live on US TV, Britney Spears also succumbed while Simon Cowell looked on, powerless to do anything but laugh. Madonna also fell prey, offering inspiring proof that even 97-year-olds can do the Gangnam Style. Sky News caught the chilling moment the condition reached the UN and Ban Ki-moon himself succumbed, hailing Gangnam Style as a potential harbinger of world peace, saying, "In this era of instability and intolerance, we need to promote better understanding through the power of music." Although shortly after he said that, it turned out Psy hadn't always been peace-minded, and the news could scarcely hide its disappointment.
It has now come out that in his younger days, Psy engaged in some vitriolic anti-Americanism.
Psy performed at a protest concert, singing along to another band song called Dear American, including these lyrics: "Kill those bleeping Yankees who've been torturing Iraqi captives. Kill their daughters, mothers, daughters-in-law, and fathers."
Still, look on the bright side, he'll presumably kill them Gangnam Style! In July, if you glanced at ITV's schedule, you could be forgiven for shouting, "Jesus Christ!" because he was on. He was.
In what can only be proof of a burgeoning God complex, Andrew Lloyd Webber and ITV teamed up to find a whole new son of God in the amazing superstar.
Who will have what it takes to play the most iconic role of all time?
I know I could be Jesus. It just feels right.
It turns out lots of men reckon they might be Jesus, either because they think they look like him, although of course, as we all know, Jesus actually looks like this, or because they sound like him, especially when they deliver traditional Christian raps.
Here we are today, auditioning for Jesus. I am gonna win, so you best all believe this.
I don't believe this. But before they could don the crown of thorns, they had to go on trial, just like Christ, except with Melanie C and Jason Donovan, instead of Pontius Pilate and a load of Romans with spears.
I mean, it's like you're on a building site, really. Right. Jesus wouldn't be doing this on stage and, you know, and sort of Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because pockets weren't invented back then. After having their spiritual mettle tested with, I shit you not, a Last Supper...
This is your last supper.
See? They were also tested on their ability to come to earth on a Yamaha, do a skid, kill a kid and knacker their balls on a dustbin lid, before turning up in the cavernous live studio to perform some traditional hymns, like this.
Yeah! Dirty Diana! No! Dirty Diana! No! Dirty Diana! No! Dirty Diana! Let me be!
Wow, I'd say he nailed it, but I suppose it's best not to mention nails to Christ.
Time for a break, but don't go anywhere because we need your help to find our Jesus. We'll see you soon.
Smells and Chanel No. 5 unveil a stunning ad in which Brad Pitt turns shit dialogue into brown dust.
It's not a journey. Every journey ends, but we go on. The world turns and we turn with it.
Turn on this.
Plans disappear.
Like scripts should.
Dreams take over.
Like another actor should.
But wherever I go, there you are. My luck, my fate, my fortune.
He's deep for a prick.
So much of 2012 had been so miserable so far, we were conditioned to expect the inevitable crapness of everything, and the Olympics were clearly going to be nothing but bad news. For one thing, we couldn't afford it. The country didn't have a pot to piss in apart from Plymouth. The weather, the weather was going to be awful as well. It had rained consistently throughout the summer. The country was being waterboarded, basically. There was moss growing on the inside of clouds. The ticketing system didn't work. London's transport network was completely knackered.
Absolutely total. These people, they haven't got a clue what they're doing.
And security, security was all a bollocks. They had to call the army in, and they immediately went mental and started positioning surface-to-air missiles on anything over chest height. When the flame made its way to the stadium, it might as well be lighting a bomb fuse.
That flame was already touring the country, where it was being carried by many goodwill ambassadors and one bad Will.I.am. Yes, it's Dick Hughes again, texting and moonwalking while carrying the thing. You know, I'm not sure quite why I find him so irritating, but I think I've narrowed it down to this little bit in his hair.
Lots of different cheery celebrities carried the torch.
This showbiz knight struck a familiar pose on the site of the 1908 Olympics,
which he'd attended as an old man.
Olympics fever was being accompanied by plenty of gaudy advertising, as you could see from the coverage, which gave rise to another complaint about the Games, that they were clearly going to be nothing but a depressing logo-strewn corporate egg and spoon contest. The nation's ad breaks creaked with one patronising faux inspirational propaganda movie after another, with legendary Olympians and Paralympians pimping goods and occasionally farting out corporate insignia willy-nilly as apparently random products and services jostled desperately to associate themselves with that wholesome Olympic glow. Given all this, the Olympics were clearly going to be ghastly.
And as the opening ceremony loomed, smartasses everywhere tried to work out what the emoticon for sneering was.
Of course, in the event, Danny Boyle's opening show was a heartwarming spectacle that made everyone in the country intensely patriotic.
The coverage of the opening ceremony was amazing. It wasn't just the most spectacular broadcast ever, it was educational because it taught you all about British history. Like how we started out as primitive Morris dancers and cricket people, all living in this field. And then Abraham Lincoln turned up and started shouting at everyone. And like chimneys grew out of the ground, rising up like big sort of penises made out of bricks. And it showed you how the Victorians invented Gangnam Style and how we got invaded by the people from the Quality Street tin. And how the mafia turned up to help us, but they were black. And then this volcano went off and we hit the lava with hammers until it flew into the air and turned into the Olympics. And I didn't know any of that actually happened, but it had all actually happened.
The next morning, it was as if we cautiously realised that maybe, since we hadn't totally ballsed the ceremony up, maybe the rest of the Games would be OK too. Usually I find watching any sport less interesting than watching, say, cardboard exist. But for some reason, I couldn't stop watching the Olympics. I think it's because I'm a nerd and it reminded me of video games, thanks to the video game style cutscene the BBC displayed whenever its coverage booted up, and the electric colour tones and crisp overlaid graphics showing who was in which lane, and the high score table and the Tron style fencing tournaments and the velodrome coverage which looked like Battle of the Planets on wheels, and the occasional weightlifting competitor who looked like an end-of-level boss who might suddenly lob a boulder at you or something.
And of course, thanks to the new Olympic tradition of doing signature gestures like Usain Bolt's thingamajig or the Mobot.
Yes, the presence of the cameras prompted many athletes to perform a fancy starting move before their event, a bit like the pre-fight animation for a character from the video game Tekken. The cameras captured many pre-bout player animations. There was the rearing tiger, the sinister squint, the burst hemorrhoid, the who the bloody hell are you looking at, and the I'm going to rip my nipples off and throw them at the crowd. In fact, the only one missing was Gangnam Style.
As well as looking like a game, it was a game we were good at.
The blanket coverage presented us with a wealth of fresh-faced, clean-living British youngsters apparently fixated on being the very best they could be. Bastards.
People started talking about what inspiring role models the Olympics were providing for a whole generation for once.
I mean, compare them to the sort of gaudy role models our youth are usually presented with, like the nihilistic, boozy attention addicts on MTV's raucous, sex and shrieking reality shows Geordie Shore and the Valleys.
Tisha's gone crazy. She keeps pulling up my skirt and flashing my foof. I'm not having that, so I shove an ice cube in her knickers. And another one up her arsehole.
At last, thanks to the Olympics, our young folk were being represented by genuine achievers. They weren't dedicating their lives to pointless nonsense. They were doing real things like jumping over a bar into some sand or throwing a disc or a stick really well once every 4 years.
Athletics provided many high points in the already euphoric coverage, such as the moment Mo Farah pulled off a spectacular win in the 10,000 metres, after which a nation held its breath hoping he wouldn't roll into the phlegm freshly flobbed onto the track by a fellow athlete. All our fears had been unfounded. The weather was great, the systems worked, and it didn't feel like a big corporate shindig because it was all on the ad-free BBC. In fact, the only thing being advertised was Britain. The schedules heaved with emotive, triumphant, romantic, slow-motion montages which managed to somehow mythologise the games before they were even quite over.
Patriotism was now at a peak. There was nothing the UK couldn't do. We were invincible. We were unstoppable. We were superior.
F*** off Frenchman, f*** off German, f*** off American.
We could do World War II all over again in our sleep if we wanted. We were the best nation on earth. Anything we put our mind to, we could achieve. Then we had the Paralympics, which also defied expectations by being about 10,000 times better than many were expecting.
In fact, if anything, they were better than the Olympics because half these sports hadn't received anything like this much jubilant coverage before, and the athletes were truly inspiring.
The Paralympics changed the way we looked at disability forever. For instance, now when I see someone in a wheelchair, I think, bloody show-off.
Almost every single aspect of the coverage was brilliantly life-affirming. For instance, here we see a man who lost both his charisma and respect in a tragic voting accident, triumphing in the 500 decibel boo.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
They hate me, they really hate me.
If you thought you'd seen a lot of the royals throughout 2012, what with the Queen popping up every 5 seconds like a mushroom in a Mario game, you hadn't seen half as much of them as you were about to.
First, Prince Harry, who'd been having a pretty good year, showcasing his stunning ability to blend into almost any surroundings, was photographed nude in a Vegas hotel room. Channel 4 News were so delighted they took Harry's bum on a walkabout tour where it could greet its subjects.
That's what he's been up to.
Is that really him?
That's really him. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's going a bit too far.
Ask her if she thinks he's wiped properly. Others were less amused, notably the Palace and the Sun newspaper, which considered this a terrible throwback to a more primitive age before the internet let us see any bum we wanted.
And the News dutifully recorded its front-page blow for press freedom.
For us, this is about the freedom of the press. This is about our readers getting involved in the discussion with the man who is third in line to the throne. It's as simple as that.
Yes, and that discussion goes, can I see your bum? No.
But a few weeks after this brave attempt to let their readers see a bum, press commitment to free speech was tested by another story involving royalty.
Or rather, royal TNA.
Because the Duchess of Cambridge, seen here exiting the I'm a Celebrity jungle with Ben Fogle, was also snapped in a state of undress as the News sadly and soberly informed its viewers.
This report does contain flash photography.
Bet it does. The cake snaps were so disgraceful, the British media turned its censorship filters up to maximum blur to prevent the merest hint of regal flesh exposure. I actually thought I'd developed glaucoma.
Ben and the Duchess, who are currently appearing on the Solomon Islands version of Big Brother, were absolutely livid.
But some people couldn't understand the upset. People like this boggle-eyed French paparazzo.
For me, it's so stupid. Because she's a young lady, she's nice, she's not fat, she's beautiful. So you have to show them.
Yes, that is the law in France. You have to show them.
Are you going to show the pictures on your program? Of course not. So it's a kind of hypocrisy.
Yeah, he's right, you know. I mean, we've got no problem showing French tits. I mean, here's a big French tit.
Throughout the year, print journalism got it in the neck on TV, and Sky News often heaved with surreal reports about newspaper folk.
Scotland Yard's confirmed that it loaned the former News International chief executive Rebecca Brooks a police horse.
Sounds outrageous, although it was a retired horse, and let me tell you, if you'd seen the photos of that poor, exhausted-looking mare with its straggly mane and haunted eyes, you'd think, that poor thing, she deserves a ride on a horse.
The fact that a Met horse is living with Rebecca Brooks for 2 years, it just strikes me as very unusual and reflects a relationship that was unhealthy.
And pretty uncomfortable, I'd have thought.
But Brooks wasn't the only former Sun editor on the receiving end. In the wake of the Hillsborough scandal, beloved national treasure and front-page lie printer Kelvin Mackenzie was subjected to disgraceful yet hilarious harassment by a Channel 4 news crew.
Don't assault me. Don't assault me.
I didn't realise Kelvin Mackenzie had a doorstep. I thought he entered the world each morning by slithering through a haunted mirror into our realm.
But things were about to get even worse for the press when Lord Justice Leveson published his report,
which threatened the future of print journalism simply by using up all the f***ing paper on Earth.
There was this thing, right, called the Lesbian Inquiry, sort of like a talk show hosted by this Brian Lesbian bloke. It was like if Chatty Man was on in the afternoon, except it wasn't like Chatty Man, because even though it had all these celebrity guests, their anecdotes were sort of unhappy.
I was relentlessly pursued by about 10 to 15 men.
You could tell the audience were depressed because they didn't laugh much. And instead of a big musical number from like Adele at the end, they brought out this report. There's no way it's coming back for a second series. It didn't really work as a format.
This Chris Jeffries bloke was in loads of reports carping on saying he'd been mistreated by the press and everything. And you're like, mate, you're on telly. I wouldn't have even heard of you if it wasn't for the papers. And you wouldn't have even sorted your hair out if they hadn't pointed out how weird it was. You know, show some gratitude.
September, always a big month for movies. And, well, look, you know what it's like when you've read a book and you really like one of the characters in it, and then someone makes a film of it and they just ruin it. Well, that.
Spreading across the Arab world, violent protests over the American film that mocks Islam.
Yes, tempers flared when a shoddy trail for a deliberately provocative anti-Islam propaganda flick called The Innocence of Muslims was posted on the internet. As you could see from the blanket coverage, it got everything the studios usually want from a movie. Strong word of mouth, huge crowds, queues around the block and a lot of heat generated.
And if you think they're pissed off, you should see what they're saying about it on Rotten Tomatoes. Usually Hollywood movies worship the prophet. I mean, profit's all they care about. But then, this wasn't a Hollywood movie, but an Islamophobic trash fest made by an imbecile called Sam Basile, seen here turning the news into an impromptu tribute to the Elephant Man when he was arrested. Like many movies, by the end there wasn't a dry eye in the house, or a house, or an eye. It was the most hostile reception for any film this year, except Prometheus. Now, call me reactionary, but personally, in the post-Savile environment, I don't think we should encourage our young folk to lionise flamboyantly dressed weirdos who claim to be doing good work, but Hollywood begs to differ.
The Dark Knight Rises is a superhero film for people who'd like to think they're watching The Seventh Seal, even though what they're actually watching is a children's film about a children's character who dresses up as a bat and hits people in the face.
Calling Batman the Dark Knight makes him sound more sophisticated than he is. It's a bit like calling Papa Smurf the Blue Patriarch.
The story is a sulky blancmange in which Le Cavalier Noir goes up against thunderous tough guy Bane, an angry bollock with a sort of child safety seatbelt mechanism glued to his face. Thing is, because Bane's every line is delivered through his alternate mask, you have to squint with your ears to understand what he's saying.
Our plan is proceeding as expected.
What?
Like shipwrecked men turning to seawater.
Huh?
I broke you.
What?
Here to end the borrowed time you've all been living on.
Well, it's not taking to nothing, paid. And despite all the pretentious stylings, the plot actually makes less sense than Thomas and the Magic Railway. For one thing, Batman gets turned into Bad Batman fairly early on, and he spends ages lying around going, ow, ow, instead of being f***ing Batman, which is what you paid to see. The Dark Knight Rises isn't bad, but behind all the noir sheen, it's no more intellectually nourishing than the 1966 Batman movie, which was camp and loopy and fun, and never once mistook itself for Ingmar Bergman's From the Life of the Marionettes.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Actually, that's almost identical to the end of Dark Knight Rises.
The Conservative Chief Whip, Andrew Mitchell, is under pressure tonight after reportedly swearing at a police officer in Downing Street and calling him a pleb.
Yes, in a hotly disputed event that did for the Tory image what seawater did for the Fukushima nuclear plant, Mitchell was accused of an altercation at the site of the gates Margaret Thatcher erected to keep plebs out. Since, at first, the media didn't have a recording of the event itself, Channel 4 News was forced to reconstruct it like an Ealing comedy with dialogue lifted from 50 Shades of Grey.
Open this gate. I'm the Chief Whip. I'm telling you, I'm the Chief Whip, and I'm coming through these gates.
This guy's almost as good as Brad Pitt in that Chanel ad.
You're f***ing plebs. Morons.
Soon Mitchell drove up to the TV cameras in a plebby little car to deny saying pleb, but apologised for general disrespect. Mind you, this wasn't enough for some police, who by now were proudly reclaiming the word pleb while campaigning against frontline cuts. Tough job when you're apparently not sure how a letterbox works. Still, never mind what the cops think, what do plebs make of it?
How would you like to be called a pleb?
Well, I'll probably just brush it off. I could be called a lot worse.
Thanks, pleb. Eventually, Mitchell resigned, thereby himself becoming a pleb who knew his place on the other side of the f***ing gate, moron.
Except shortly after we done did this piece, Channel 4 News unveiled shocking CCTV footage disputing the police version of events and indicating a lack of plebs in Plebgate, making this whole mess a plebless Plebgate gate. Thanks to the Olympics, millions of young people now dreamed of receiving a medal. It was just the same when I was a kid, except back then, the medals we coveted were being handed out by a sort of blonde-haired, wind-blasted skeleton beast.
Jimmy Savile!
For decades, Jimmy Savile was a TV legend, a garish and eccentric frontman of almost unparalleled weirdness.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Top of the Pops.
Looking at Savile shows from the archive is an unsettling experience now because of everything that's happened since. It feels a bit like sifting through evidence. Take his signature show, Jim Will Fix It, in which he ostensibly made children's dreams come true. It was the format that was the real star here. As a host, Savile didn't really display much charisma, more a kind of disconnected eeriness. That was always my memory of Jim Will Fix It, that it was like a fun fair run by an off-putting scarecrow, whose mere on-screen presence now lends the show a deeply uncomfortable air.
Now, you won't believe this. This is quite true. It says here, Dear Mr. Savile, I am writing to tell you about my granddaughter. She is only 10 years old, and she is absolutely mad about dancing. And she goes, music, and can she go on top of the pops and all that? Well, of course, at 10, no question, you see. So, 6 years ago, I replied, hi, she'll have to wait a bit, because the regulations are she's got to be 16. Tell her to hurry. Love, JS. Now, I thought that had got me off the hook.
By the late 90s, Savile's TV career was effectively over, and he'd become a weird, marginalised figure, famously profiled by Louis Theroux in a surprisingly revealing documentary.
Are you basically saying that so tabloids don't, pursue this whole isn't he a paedophile line, basically?
Yes. Oh, aye. How do they know whether I am or not? How does anybody know whether I am? Nobody knows whether I am or not. I know I'm not.
When Savile died and his gold casket was driven through Leeds, thousands lined the streets ostensibly to say goodbye, but possibly just to check he was definitely dead.
And then this year it turned out he might not have been as innocent as almost no one thought he was.
A television documentary will this week claim that the late broadcaster Sir Jimmy Savile sexually abused schoolgirls in the 1970s.
Always the quiet ones, isn't it?
Rumours about Savile had circulated for decades. Now, roughly a year after his death, ITV broadcast a documentary that would sink his reputation for good. It contained plenty of upsetting and powerful testimony from alleged victims of Savile, as well as inherently creepy reconstructions of allegations almost too grim for the human mind to cope with. And the bad news for human mind owners was that over the following weeks, you were going to hear a lot more about it.
The accompanying stories grew even more appalling. There were even allegations he'd had sex with corpses.
Tuning into the news became like riding an endless looping ghost train with this creepy cadaverous monster perpetually leering toward you through the gloom, the news ticker scrolling in front of him like police incident tape.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Savile only had any kind of TV career at all, because back in the 70s, TVs were tiny and people kept them on the other side of the room. So he was physically horrible, but he was only about the size of a jacket potato, and he was way over there, so it didn't really bother you. Whereas today, our TVs are the size of a Harrods shop window, so seeing them on the news, IMAX size, you're suddenly struck by just how grotesque he was. Every time his image popped up, it was like having a spider crawl across your brain. But the man himself was dead, so there was no prospect of a trial, apart from the inevitable dramatised one Channel 4 will probably do next autumn season. So instead, the hunt was on for someone or something to blame.
One immediate suspect was the time period of many of the allegations itself, the 1970s, a decade of brown air, awful furnishings, nihilistically bad hair, industrial action, dead pig carcasses all spinning around, and tear and piss-streaked concrete. And almost as a reaction to the grimness of that, 70s culture was spangly and brash. Much of that culture looks outrageously alien to modern eyes. Young women were blithely lobbed in to zhuzh up almost any form of entertainment. Leering at them was always hilarious, and their age often seemed completely immaterial.
Some of the things you see are quite an education. Just look at that shower. Blimey, they're big for their age.
And what about the culture within the BBC in the 70s? Was the corporation hiding something? And what about today? Had it shunted a Newsnight Savile investigation of its own aside to make room for a lukewarm Christmas tribute with all the entertainment value of a blocked hose? Many thought it had.
Faced with the heinous allegations, the BBC immediately launched a far-reaching, comprehensive f***up. First, new DG George Entwistle tried to wow reporters with his fancy bartending skills. God, it's like watching Tom Cruise in Cocktail. Then, in a masochistic move, BBC One ran a panorama investigating Newsnight, while simultaneously on BBC Two, Newsnight was commenting on Panorama's investigation into itself.
As you watch this, Panorama on BBC One is broadcasting interviews with members of the Newsnight team.
And if you press the red button now, Newsround investigates Watchdog, while Watchdog asks, was there a country file ring at the BBC?
While the BBC agonised, the press had the perfect story. It had everything: paedophilia, the BBC, a whiff of incompetence or corruption, Britain's most notorious serial killer, and a dead celebrity who couldn't sue. There were also Savile's astonishing links to the establishment, to the Prime Minister, to the NHS, to the royal family. It was all just the right breeding ground for conspiracy theories, which quickly flooded the internet.
Meanwhile, a rudderless Newsnight suffered a complete nervous breakdown, and in a classic example of BBC oversteer, ran a report which didn't seem to have been fact-checked very thoroughly. A report which wrongly claimed a senior political figure was a child abuser.
Soon the names of supposed suspects were being gleefully circulated online, and Twitter turned into a depressing guessing game, which proved to be the final death blow for an already beleaguered DG. And the whole affair reached a strange new low in an uncomfortable edition of This Morning.
David Cameron was on This Morning, and you could see he was tense because he was being interviewed by Philip Schofield. And you never know what Schofield's going to do, because he's a maverick. He might suddenly ask who your favourite X Factor judge is or something. Just spring it on you like a grand inquisitor.
Philip Schofield had gone on the internet and he'd found the names of these people. And because Philip Schofield's a good bloke, you know, he didn't just walk away, you know, turn a blind eye. He wrote the names down, and he spends like, you know, a whole 3 minutes doing this, you know, really puts his back into it. And then later, David Cameron's on This Morning, being all like, oh, you know, I'm the Prime Minister, and doing his serious face and his hand gestures he learned in Prime Minister school. And Philip Schofield, right, goes like, bang, here's a list of pedos, fucking sort it out.
I have those names there. Those are the names on a piece of paper. You know the names on that piece of paper. Will you be speaking to those people?
But instead of thanking him, Cameron goes all pissy about it, going like, oh, that's dangerous.
Look, I think, Philip, this is really important, right? Because there is a danger, if we're not careful, that this can turn into a sort of witch hunt.
There's no point in a witch hunt against pedos, because pedos are harder to spot than witches. So a witch hunt isn't enough. We used to have like trials in a court when someone was a paedophile, right? But that cost loads of money, and sometimes it didn't work because you'd find out they weren't one after all.
But now, because we've got computers, we can decide, you know, who's a pedo or who looks like a pedo, and then work out, you know, what they've done and make up all the proper facts and everything, and then find out where they live and tweet the coordinates and get together and go around and kill them with their bare hands right in their own homes. I mean, that hasn't actually happened yet, but it will. And it'll probably happen next year, and it'll be brilliant.
2012 was a bumper year for elections, with more crossing box action than 10 tic-tac-toe tournaments glued together in an awkward metaphor.
The French traded Nicolas Sarkozy for François Hollande, the Egyptians traded Mubarak for the Muslim Brotherhood, while Russian voters had a thorny choice between action man Vladimir Putin and action man Vladimir Putin.
Some found the choice so thrilling they voted again and again, like this man expertly captured feeding ballot papers into a box over and over again, like a human votocopier. This was exactly the sort of thing that led some cynics to claim the election might be rigged.
Hence sporadic outbreaks of nudie protest and the presence of a team of foreign observers headed by a Dutch politician who immediately rendered the news fantastic thanks to his completely brilliant name.
The government's control of the whole electoral process rendered the vote unfair, according to Dutch observer Tiny Cox.
The Russian presidential election showed a clear winner.
Can't be much fun being Tiny Cox on election night. Everyone awaiting the result, constantly asking, is it in yet?
When the victor was announced, there was a massive swing from Putin to more Putin, and the man himself was so delighted he pissed his face. Meanwhile, in Greece, ominous coverage highlighted a growing taste for fascism, courtesy of Golden Dawn, a far-right party with a logo that looked like a cheap swastika knockoff made in Crete. ITN sent a slightly anxious-looking James Mates in to meet a spokesman who was sitting in a cut-price fascist lair looking like a bit of bad Gary Newman fan art.
Still, if Mates was nervous, he needn't have worried. Golden Dawn members only hit people on camera if they're women, as this shocking incident on live Greek TV demonstrated. But these events were mere bum garnish compared to the US election, which was altogether more exciting, because it was like a movie.
It's your vote, your future, your country, your choice.
As the US election inched nearer, it was clear Mitt Romney, a sort of Bob Monkhouse action figure with the personality of a VAT return and the voice of a Dignitas tour guide, was in trouble.
Despite resembling the president in a 1960s Marvel comic, he had a likability issue. Many saw him as a heartless corporate millionaire, partly because the news media repeatedly caught him sounding like a heartless corporate millionaire. In a series of astonishing scenes, he blurted statements like, "I'm not concerned about the very poor."
"I'm not concerned about the very poor. We have a safety net there."
Said he liked being able to fire people.
"I like being able to fire people who provide services to me."
And claimed that corporations are people.
We could raise taxes on people. That's not the way. Corporations are people, my friend. We can raise taxes on. Of course they are. Everything corporations earn ultimately goes to people. So, where do you think it goes? Whose pockets? Whose pockets? People's pockets.
Yeah, and who made those people's pockets? Corporations. Yeah, back at you, Romney.
When Romney wasn't pulling a Montgomery Burns, he was captured babbling cluelessly, like his mouth was being operated by Norman Wisdom.
I'm not familiar precisely with exactly what I said, but I stand by what I said, whatever it was.
In a bid to stoke enthusiasm at the Republican convention, the party wheeled out the legend that was Clint Eastwood, who promptly held a mystifying debate with an empty chair.
Presumably he'd been told they were going to CGI Obama in post-production.
What do you want me to tell Romney? I can't tell him to do that. Can't do that to himself.
Having mistaken a fellow piece of wood for the most powerful man in the world, Eastwood then crumbled in the face of the chair's rhetorical skills.
What do you mean, shut up?
Still, at least around now, it seemed things couldn't get any worse for the Romney campaign, until they inevitably did.
Yes, Romney was caught on a hidden camera bad-mouthing 47% of the US electorate, the kind of soaring rhetoric that usually saws your chance of winning in half. And as the first debate loomed, the media was already reciting lines from Romney's obituary.
The wheels are coming off the Romney campaign.
But then something odd happened during that first debate. The slick, assured Obama people thought they knew was nowhere to be seen, having traded personalities with Eastwood's chair.
You know,
now it was Obama's turn to be pilloried in the media.
Instead of making dramatic points, the president meandered.
Suddenly all bets were off and Romney started creeping up in the national polls. And then, perilously close to Election Day, politics were temporarily blown aside by dramatic disaster movie footage as Superstorm Sandy smashed into New York.
Oh my God!
Our tree! It's a disaster. Terrible. Terrible, terrible.
and we're going to be voting. I don't know how we're going to go out to vote.
New Yorkers, they always brag, we're the best city in the world, and we're the toughest, and I'm from New York. And yeah, you're a badass, yeah, till you get a little rainfall, and then you going, oh, I've been 12 days without power.
Somebody get here, help us, please.
It was the opposite of after 9/11. They made a lot of news about, oh, New Yorkers are getting together, and for the first time, they're meeting each other, they're helping each other out, they're sharing their grief. Well, you should have kept that up and been nice to your neighbor for more than a week after 9/11. Because there's probably 10,000 people within walking distance that have power, but you've been a prick to them for the last 11 years, and now they fucking hate you again. Suck it, Mr. Soggy Socks.
Meanwhile, back in election land and away from the TV cameras, nerdy Moneyball-style stats geeks had long been calmly predicting a modest win for Obama. Despite this, come election night itself, the news wheeled out its most bombastic graphics and tried to play up the drama of a race it insisted was still too close to call.
This presidential contest could be a squeaker till the end.
Although in the event the race was called fairly early on, leading to jubilant scenes amongst Obamaites and slightly less jubilant scenes from the Romney faithful. Then Romney himself came out to give a concession speech, which incredibly he managed to deliver without calling absolutely everyone watching a peasant and an arsehole. Sky News, meanwhile, seemed more interested in another great American orator, Mr. Dick Hughes.
It feels good to see all the hard work be paid off.
The thing about will.i.am is he spent so long on British screens this year, the American media seemed to just forget who he was.
We're just kind of giving you a little bit of what you see here. That's Wyclef Jean.
By December, everyone needed cheering up, and Fox News was happy to oblige.
Great Britain may want to start building a paparazzi-proof delivery room somewhere because Prince William's wife, Kate, is preggers.
Twinkly, tit-witted showbiz bumwash slingers Entertainment Tonight covered the story with CGI mock-ups showing what the child won't look like, and loads of other old shit.
How much weight will she gain? And will they have royal twins? And what this royal psychic knows?
Nothing.
To celebrate Christmas, Adland highlighted the hilarious subjugation of women. First, Boots unflinchingly depicted the problems facing cash-strapped single-parent families.
Let's get you back out there, Mum.
Tragic, really. They need the income from her walking the streets.
Good luck.
Then Asda portrayed Mum as little more than a member of household staff who doesn't even get to sit on a chair at lunch and has to squat near the edge like a dog begging for scraps. But the winner in the maudlin Christmas ad stakes was John Lewis, which delivered this heartstring-tugging tale of a snowman who undertakes an epic journey to buy a hat and gloves for the snow girl of his dreams.
Of course, it's worth bearing in mind that since snowmen can't move of their own accord, he's had to be built by hand for each stage of this journey, presumably by children. So this whole thing is really just despicable propaganda for child labour. But these attempts to cheer the population were nothing compared to the finest Christmas broadcast ever fashioned. Towie Live, which combined live, unedited conversations between people who can barely speak.
And the thing is, right, I can't believe how much acts are going on. Like, how much acts are there?
And on-stage performances from people-shaped things that definitely can't sing.
I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. Life in plastic is fantastic.
And sometimes, excitingly, both of those things together at once.
Well done, at the end of the day, this is why I
kiss me like the fellow once said, hey, you got a kick in the head.
Well, that was 2012, and guess what? The world didn't end. Unless it did after I recorded this link, obviously, and you're a future space archaeologist watching this using some kind of temporal transponder system. You've connected directly to my fossilised remains in the future, in which case, well done, aren't you clever? I'll see the rest of you again in a few weeks. Until then, get out!
Also in reflective mood, next on BBC Two, a collection of the best bits from QI.